Part 17. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 161. Wang Ling has now experienced intermediate strengthening, and his physical fitness and combat effectiveness are naturally extraordinary. If he were to fight with Agent Tanya in a one-on-one fight, Wang Ling was confident that he could completely crush Tanya. However, Agent Tanya's fighting method is not fighting, but a pair of terrifying double guns. Wang Ling had repeatedly emphasized the use of weapons to counter the enemy before, but unfortunately, Agent Tanya was restraining him tightly, leaving him helpless. Unless he uses a large crowd as a cover for a sneak attack, it might be possible to deal with Tanya. But after all, it would be impossible to win with force, and the number of casualties it would cause would be horrific. Wang Ling would not dare to do this. Using tanks or anti-aircraft crawlers could effectively target Tanya, but Wang Ling still wanted to kill Tanya himself, otherwise the resentment would not be completely released. Now, the strength is still insufficient. We need to continue to strengthen and continue to select more arms, Wang Ling muttered silently. His voice was not loud, but it was full of fighting spirit. Now he has completely looked away. The extra-dimensional system and the red alert world are double-edged swords. Since he wants to become stronger from them, he must also bear the risks involved. What's more, there are people here that he must kill. However, no matter how strong the hatred is, Wang Ling cannot reach the sky in one step. This hatred has to come bit by bit, and this road has to be walked step by step. On this battlefield, the two sides have been in a stalemate for a long time. They also attack each other from time to time, but it is usually difficult to effectively attack the enemy. As time goes by, the commanders of both sides have lost their patience. Anxious for a decisive battle, the harassment team in another base was killed. Major General Li Wiki obviously saw it and seemed to be unhappy. He dispatched 5 or 6 terrorist robots that day to major mines to hunt the Allied hyperspace mining vehicles. Speaking of which, this approach still caused some headaches for the Allies. This terrifying robot can get into the inside of a minecart and start causing trouble, causing the minecart to continuously lose blood. However, once it is drilled in, there is nothing the minecart can do. Of course, when moving through time and space, the terrifying robot cannot follow it and will be thrown out directly. However, this robot will always be parked in the mine. Whenever a minecart approaches, it will start moving, but it is quite difficult to deal with. The most troublesome thing for the enemy is that they are afraid of getting into the tank group. Occasionally, if a passing tank group is targeted by a terrorist robot, but fails to blow it up in time, it will be a disaster. The terrorist robot hides inside, causing the tank to continuously lose health, and then explode when the health is exhausted. Finally, the robot will quickly get into the nearby tanks before all the tanks can react, and continue to destroy them. If you can't be ruthless enough to directly blow up the invaded tank, or if you fail to catch it in time, then this terrifying robot has a chance to destroy a group of tanks. Seeing those terrifying robots in place, and some of them already getting into the Allied minecarts, Wang Ling smiled with a sense of gloating. The harassment continued, but the base was very peaceful and orderly. However, after spending so long after the blocking battle, counting the time, it was almost time for the new recruits to arrive. Sure enough, that afternoon, a group of red soldiers came outside the battlefield. Most of them were conscripts, and their number could reach hundreds. There were also many anti-aircraft infantry and magnetic blast infantry mixed in, but what Wang Ling was most interested in was that the figures running at the front turned out to be police dogs. It seemed that because he had been in a police dog training base, Wang Ling felt particularly kind to these police dogs. Looking at them, he couldn't help but think of Xiao He. I don't know how this little guy is doing now. Has he gained weight or lost weight? Will he obey the command of the fat cow? Maintaining this longing, Wang Ling smiled faintly. Led by an anti-aircraft crawler vehicle, this group of recruits ran non-stop and finally arrived at the base before dark. When they were lined up together, except for the police dog, who was relatively calm and retained sufficient physical strength, everyone else was panting. After running for so long, I was really exhausted. Looking at their appearance, Wang Ling was extremely happy. This group of people had to come by themselves, but Wang Ling came in a crawler truck a few days ago. The treatment was really bad. The base did not embarrass these new recruits, did not torment them all night, and did not even arrange patrol tasks for them after dinner. They designated a temporary garrison area early. No matter what tasks there will be in the future, let's sleep through tonight first. It took a long time to finish a battle, and the Allies did not choose to attack tonight, giving this group of recruits a peaceful night. Major General Li Wiki, Rovsky, and Zhao Pingwang were quite efficient in their work. The next day, after running in the morning and having breakfast, the new recruits were already organized. Some of them are joining the teams in the base to replenish soldiers. For the other ones, 2 independent teams were organized separately, and 2 people from the Eagle team were dispatched to temporarily serve as captains. At the same time, during this day, the tank factory also worked overtime to produce many Rhino tanks and anti-aircraft crawlers to supplement the production. Now, the vacancies in the base's soldiers have finally been filled. This speed is not unpleasant. The next step, in addition to garrisoning, is to find a way to attack and make the Allies pay a certain price. However, this attack cannot be launched immediately. Major General Li Wiki obviously does not want to mechanize the dispatch of Rhino tanks and his own soldiers. This is not so much harassment as it is sending someone to death. And this time, just 1 day has passed. The next day, Wang Ling was still on standby, ready to take on various combat missions. However, before the mission could wait, he saw a group of tanks coming out of the blue Allied base on the map. The lineup of this team of tanks was relatively simple. There were only 4 Grizzly tanks. They stormed towards Wang Ling's base with great momentum. What can these 4 tanks do? They can't even break through the base defense line. Wang Ling was a little curious. He couldn't understand the idea of the blue Allied base for a while, but he was already prepared to deal with the enemy. After waiting for a while, the Grizzly tank finally approached the coalition base, but stopped a long way away, as if it was waiting for something. Not long after, another transport plane suddenly flew over the battlefield, and it also landed outside the scope of the coalition base. When something goes wrong, there must be a monster. Wang Ling frowned. After looking at the electronic map, he suddenly discovered an oil production plant not too far away from the tanks and soldiers, and then he suddenly understood. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 162. On this battlefield, a total of 6 oil production plants were discovered, and their branches were all scattered and irregular. Of the 6 oil production plants, the Allies directly occupied 4, while the coalition forces only captured 2. The base where Wang Ling was located also had an oil production plant. What is the role of an oil production plant? Of course it's about making money. On the battlefield of Red Alert World, there are limited ways to make money. The main way to make money is to mine gold mines with mining trucks. However, the resources on the battlefield are limited. No matter how many gold mines there are, they will be mined out one day. Relying on the spraying speed of the mining machines in the mines, they simply cannot supply the consumption of the war. However, the oil production plant is an exception. This thing can continuously extract oil and continuously provide funds for the base. Although the amount provided at any time is not very large, when accumulated, this is a considerable amount of financial wealth. Quantitative changes lead to qualitative changes. If all 6 oil production plants on the battlefield are occupied by the coalition bases, the amount of funds obtained every moment will be very considerable. After a normal war, there is even the possibility of getting richer as the war progresses. However, just think about that kind of thing. This is a battlefield after all. The oil production plant was originally an ownerless thing. Every base can be occupied and has the ability to destroy it. The Allies will not just watch the coalition dominate. Of 6 oil production plants, for example, right now, there is only one base where Wangling is located, and it seems that the Allies are dissatisfied. These grizzly tanks and paratroopers are clearly heading for the oil production plant. Although 2 sentry guns were established near the oil production plant, they could not stop the attack of paratroopers and grizzly tanks at all. Thinking of this, Wangling became a little anxious. He didn't have time to run to the command post in person, so he contacted Zhao Pingwang through the radio. "Brother Zhao, can you hear me?" Zhao Pingwang, Rovsky, and Major General Li Wiki were all in the command post now, observing the grizzly tanks and paratroopers, wondering what their intentions were. When they suddenly heard Wangling's voice, they were all a little confused. After glancing at each other, Zhao Mingwang finally contacted Wangling with the permission of Major General Li Wiki. "You hear me, Wangling, what's the matter?" Wangling didn't have time to beat around the bush and went straight to the point. "The Allies dispatched paratroopers and 4 grizzly tanks. Judging from this posture, they are clearly heading for our oil production plant. The 2 sentry guns can't stop them. Wolf Squad request to go to war and protect the oil production plant." In the command post, they could all hear Wangling's radio. After Wangling finished his request, Major General Li Wiki was a little surprised. He quickly mobilized the map video and found that nearby, it was indeed the oil production plant they occupied. Let me tell you, what can such a lineup do? Love goes to the oil production plant. Major General Li Wiki's eyes flashed coldly. "You are so courageous that you even dare to make plans for our oil production plant." Rovitsky was a little confused. "It's really possible, but how did Wangling know about it?" Zhao Pingwang frowned. "No matter how he knows, as long as there is a real possibility, these paratroopers and grizzly tanks cannot be kept." "Sir, look, this." "That's right. Order the Wolf Squad to dispatch immediately to annihilate this enemy force. The oil production plant must not be destroyed." Major General Li Wiki also gave the order decisively. "Why?" Prince Zhao Ming responded, and then used the radio to relay the order to Wangling. After asking for permission, Wangling grinned and finally had a mission. "Sun Dehua." "Here, Captain, what's wrong?" "You immediately select 8 3-star soldiers and ride with me on a tracked vehicle to the oil production plant. The others, along with the Apocalypse tanks and Rhino tanks, follow me behind, arrive at the battlefield as soon as possible, and annihilate all the Allied troops there." "Yes." Wangling gave the order skillfully, and the entire Wolf team immediately became active. All members immediately set off and moved towards the location designated by Wangling. Wangling, Sun Dehua, and 8 3-star elite mobilizers boarded the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle and set off in a hurry. The oil production plant is not too close to the base. Depending on the speed of the Wolf team, by the time they arrive at the oil production plant and the sentry guns may have been completely destroyed. Therefore, Wangling could only let 10 people go first and rely on the mobility of the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle to rush to the oil production plant first, beating the Allies hard while holding them back. Sure enough, after this group of paratroopers landed and merged with the Grizzly tank, they did not run towards the coalition base. Instead, they ran directly towards the coalition oil production plant. Their movements may have been a little unclear before, but now their purpose has been confirmed, that is, they want to attack the oil production plant. In the command post, Major General Li Wiki breathed a sigh of relief after seeing this. Wangling's response was quite fast. If the Wolf team had not been dispatched in advance, this oil production plant might not have been saved. Major General Li Wiki was still very confident about the firepower of the Wolf Squad. He sent the Wolf Squad over, and there was no way this group of Allied troops could resist. On the battlefield, those Allied troops were very close to the oil production plant after all, and the Grizzly tanks were not too slow, and they arrived at the oil production plant not long after. Sensing the enemy's approach, the two sentry guns immediately opened fire and intercepted two Grizzly tanks. But the remaining two vehicles passed directly over the sentry guns and began to bombard the oil production plant. In the rear, although the speed of the group of paratroopers was not fast, they were approaching the oil production plant after all, and they had already arrived at the battlefield. As long as they joined the Grizzly tank, the oil production plant would not be saved. But at this moment, two anti-aircraft tracked vehicles suddenly rushed over. Under Wang Ling's order, they stopped outside the range of the Grizzly tank and released 10 of Wang Ling's men. Brothers, stop them and beat them hard. After seeing the current situation, Wang Ling didn't care about anything else. After giving the order, he rushed over first. However, Wang Ling also kept a careful eye on the attack. The two Grizzly tanks couldn't hit the oil production plant for a while, so he simply let the oil production plant attract firepower, while he was eyeing the death of the sentry cannon. The Grizzly tank was stunned, and the powerful electromagnetic attack was launched. Combined with the firepower of the sentry cannon, the Grizzly tank soon became too much. Sun Dehu and his 9 men also followed closely behind and immediately began to suppress fire. The fire snakes sprayed out on the Grizzly tank and exploded it in an instant. The sentry gun didn't stop, but it immediately turned around and opened fire on one of the two Grizzly tanks attacking the oil production plant. After the Grizzly tank's attention was attracted, it ignored the oil production plant, turned around, and attacked the sentry gun. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 163. Although it is a bit more difficult, the allies controlled by the system still have the same old problem. When advancing and attacking, once any soldiers, tanks, or buildings provoke it, they will immediately give up the attack target and instead follow. He was so stubborn that he looked like he was always willing to spend every penny he spent. This problem is sometimes annoying, but Wang Ling likes this problem very much, and many tactical arrangements are based on this. At present, this Grizzly tank has attracted firepower from the sentry gun, but with the firepower of a tank, it is difficult to dismantle the sentry gun. Wang Ling and the others seize the time and collectively attack the other Grizzly tank that is attacking the oil production plant. The tanks attacked. A powerful electromagnetic launch device and 9 powerful Babisha submachine guns were fired at the same time. Under the high-frequency and high-intensity attacks, the Grizzly tank quickly saw red, and was quickly beaten again. Burst. During this period, the Grizzly tank seemed to be stunned. So many attacks fell on it, and it didn't know where to fight back for a while. The barrel shook twice in succession, and finally just he fired one shot at Erlu, and then he couldn't fire a second shot. Grizzly tanks before the elite level had limited damage to infantry. What's more, Erlu was now a 3-star elite. He didn't care about these injuries at all. As time went by, they would soon heal on their own. The two Grizzly tanks attacking the oil production plant were all stopped, and the oil production plant was finally protected from attack for a while. However, the current situation has not eased yet. The Grizzly tank on the front foot has just been destroyed, and the group of paratroopers on the back foot has already approached here. After all, they had received the order, so they ignored the sentry guns that were fighting fiercely with the Grizzly tanks. After crossing, they wanted to attack the oil production plant. Brothers, keep hitting me. However, Wang Ling and the others did not agree, so they turned their guns and started fighting with the paratroopers. Under attack, these paratroopers seemed to have temporarily given up their mission, and they got into a fight with Wang Ling and the other 10 before they even had time to deploy. Among the 10 of them, Wang Ling is a 3-star elite magnetic blast infantry, and the others are all 3-star elite mobilization soldiers. In a head-to-head confrontation, those paratroopers are no match at all, but it is no problem to kill 1 or 2 of them with all their lives. Moreover, looking at their posture, it was obvious that they also had this idea. A large amount of firepower was concentrated on Erlu, apparently wanting to kill Erlu in advance. However, they were not the only ones in the Wolf squad. The 2 anti-aircraft tracked vehicles also hurriedly joined the battlefield and began to clear the troops quickly. Then the Rhino tanks of the Wolf squad also arrived. Under the attack from both inside and outside, those paratroopers were unable to do anything. No matter how long they persisted, they were all wiped out. Even the 2 Grizzly tanks that were fighting with the sentry artillery were killed by swatting at rabbits. In the battle to defend the oil plant, the Wolf team won completely. However, the Wolf team did not pay the price for nothing. Erlu was targeted in front and back, and now he is seriously injured. There is only a trace of blood left on his head. He is lying on the ground now, covered in blood, and his face is pale. It's so ugly. But fortunately, he is not dead yet. With the recovery ability of the 3-star elite soldiers, he can recover as before given some time. But Wang Ling still felt a little distressed when he saw it. He went up to check the injuries and saw that the bullet holes were indeed healing on their own. Then he felt relieved and asked, "How is it, Erlu, can you hold on?" Erlu gritted his teeth, "Yes. I can recover even if I don't die." "It's okay, Captain." This statement was so incredible that Wang Ling couldn't laugh or cry for a while after hearing it. Now, the oil production plant has been successfully defended, but about a quarter of its health has been knocked out, and the 2 sentry guns have also lost nearly half of their health. Wang Ling observed this situation and frowned slightly. These buildings have insufficient health, so there are always some hidden dangers. If the Wolf team retreats, another wave of paratroopers may be enough to completely destroy the place. After thinking about it briefly, Wang Ling did not issue any retreat orders. At this time, the 2 Apocalypse tanks finally arrived one after the other. Looking at their speed, Wang Ling sighed repeatedly. Although the Apocalypse tank was powerful, its maneuverability was also a headache. What is even slower is the infantry. After the Apocalypse tanks arrived, this group of infantry arrived belatedly, but the battle here has been over for a long time. When the Wolf team arrived, Wang Ling simply gave the order to stay in place. They would not leave here until the oil production plant and sentry guns were repaired. The base's actions were not slow. After the battle, engineers were dispatched immediately. After running around for a long time, they arrived at the oil production plant. After a short rest, they began to work and repair the buildings here. The engineers were not slow at all, and they successfully repaired it in more than 2 hours. Moreover, it seems that Major General Li Wiki was afraid of another similar attack. This group of engineers even started to build magnetic storm coils and anti-aircraft guns here. For this oil production plant, the base is also very cautious. During this period, the Wolf team naturally existed as an escort. By the time all the projects were completed, it was already late at night. Wang Ling was not in a hurry to return to the base, so he simply let the Wolf team spend the night nearby. After this attack was dismantled by the Wolf squad, the Allies made no movement for a while. It was not known whether they were recharging their energy or holding back some bad ideas. But in this way, the Wolf team was relieved. They took turns on duty and encountered no enemy attacks all night, and the next day was safe and sound. Not in the base, the Wolf team did not do any morning exercises. After waking up, they just took turns eating breakfast, which was inevitably a bit lazy. Now that the enemy attack has been repelled, the oil production plant has been successfully repaired, and several more defense facilities have even been built, there is no point in the wolf team staying here anymore. However, Wang Ling didn't want to leave just like that, and never gave an order to return to the base. After recuperating for a period of time, Wang Ling checked Erlu's injuries and found that although the latter had not fully recovered after such a long period of recovery, he was already somewhat healed and would not affect the subsequent battle. This makes Wang Ling envious. Although he now has the ability to heal on his own, the speed is much slower than that of a normal 3-star elite soldier. According to Wang Ling's estimation, if you really want to obtain this ability to recover quickly, you have to rely on advanced enhancement. Wang Ling had a headache when he thought about unlocking the 100,000 points for advanced enhancement. However, the road still has to be walked step by step. After thinking about it for a while, Wang Ling temporarily put down this idea and asked in his mind, "Uncle He, pushed the oil production plant occupied by the Allies, and accumulated points?" "Yes." "Boy, if you ask this, are you thinking? Hey, do you need to say more? Since the damn Allies have set their sights on our oil production plant, then don't even think about getting their oil production plant anymore." Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 164. When talking about this purpose, Wang Ling smiled sinisterly. These oil production plants were just left to dry. The Allies didn't come to make plans, and Wang Ling didn't take the initiative to target them. Although the Allies' operation was defeated, it also disgusted Wang Ling. "Since you are disgusted, then I will do something even more disgusting to see who can bear it." Although no one else could hear the communication with Uncle He in his mind, Wang Ling's expression could be seen by the surrounding members of the wolf team, and many of them grinned. But those old members, such as Sun Dehu and Erlu, could tell at a glance that this cheap captain was definitely planning something bad. Sure enough, after Wang Ling laughed sinisterly for a while, he used the radio to contact him. "Brother Zhao, can you hear me?" "I can hear you, Wang Ling, what's wrong? If you don't go back to the base after completing your mission, why are you stationed there?" Prince Xiaoping's voice came out on the radio. Wang Ling was too lazy to go around in circles. "Brother Zhao, I checked the map. Now, the Allies have occupied 4 of the 6 oil production plants. One of them is very close to us. The arms of the Allies are stretched too long. I want to interrupt him." "You?" King Xiaoming was a little shocked at Wang Ling's idea for a moment, but Wang Ling didn't wait for him to say anything more and continued to argue. "Why can they attack our oil production plant at will, but we can't counterattack? This is also what a coward. Moreover, the longer an oil production plant is left to the enemy, the more funds they will have, and the more disadvantageous it will be to us." Therefore, the wolf team requested to go to war and took down the Allied oil production plant in one go. After all, we are on the battlefield. Although Wang Ling can decide the details of the mission by himself, he can just ensure that the mission is completed. But Wang Ling has no right to decide on the task itself, and it must be approved by his superiors. As for Wang Ling's request, King Xiaoping was also a little embarrassed. Wang Ling was not in a hurry and just waited silently. However, soon after, he failed to hear Xiaoping Wang's reply, but the voice of Major General Li Wiki came over the radio. "Wang Ling, you are really courageous." After hearing the owner of the voice, Wang Ling didn't dare to neglect him. He lost the naturalness he had shown to King Xiaoping and quickly gave a military salute in the direction of the base. Later, Major General Li Wiki said, "I have also seen the 4 Allied oil production plants on the map, and indeed one is not far from our sphere of influence. However, there are many defensive buildings there. If we attack by force, I'm afraid the losses will be huge." Wang Ling immediately replied, "Sir, a frontal attack will indeed cause a lot of losses, but we can use some strategies to minimize the casualties." Oh, Major General Li Wiki also seemed to be very interested in the deployment mentioned by Wang Ling. "Tell me about it." Next, Wang Ling spent a period of time describing the plan he had just thought of. After hearing this, Major General Li Weiqi's eyes lit up. Okay, this request is accurate. But... Huh? Sir, but what? After all, this oil production plant is close to our sphere of influence. It is really a waste to destroy it like this. It is better to occupy it directly. You are on standby for now. I will send engineers there to follow you. Okay, sir, one engineer is enough. The other 3 oil production plants are not close to us. Even if they are occupied, they will be difficult to defend. Why, do you have ideas for other oil extraction plants? No, since we are going to fight, let's do something ruthless. They were the ones who first came up with the idea of the oil production plant. You have to figure it out yourself, but don't force it. If there is danger, retreat immediately. Yes, sir. After asking for instructions at this point, Major General Li Weiqi finally agreed to his request. After Wang Ling cut off the radio, he looked at the direction of the Allied oil production plant on the map, his eyes somewhat fiery. His communication with Major General Li Weiqi could also be heard by others. They already knew the next action plan of the Wolf team without Wang Ling repeating it. However, Wang Ling still gathered everyone together and informed him of his deployment plan in detail to ensure that nothing went wrong. Afterwards, it was waiting for the base engineer to arrive. The engineer's running speed was not very fast. At best, he was just like an ordinary conscript. Wang Ling and the others waited for a long time before they saw an engineer carrying a toolbox and wearing a safety helmet running towards them. This type of unit does not have any combat capabilities, but it is also very supportive on the battlefield. A building that is about to be destroyed can be repaired by an engineer, and it can be completely restored almost instantly, which is much faster than the repair by engineers. This kind of speed is somewhat exaggerated in reality, but who said this is a game? There are always many differences between him and reality. At the same time, this engineer can also invade most of the enemy's main buildings. As long as they are invaded by him, the building can immediately change its alignment. However, the enemy who is successfully invaded can only be a dumb man eating coptis. The building he built with his own hands becomes the opponent's. If he doesn't want to watch his opponent dismantle it and sell it for money, he can only blow it up in advance. However, engineers also have some disadvantages. The aforementioned lack of combat effectiveness is that they cannot encounter the enemy without strong cover. In addition, this engineer is also a one-time use. After an engineer repairs a building or captures an enemy building in an instant, he disappears. This point is quite different from the reality. Recalling this information in his mind, Wang Ling couldn't help but sigh. However, when there is a war, there are sacrifices. Wang Ling had already figured it out when he returned to the battlefield this time, so he stopped being pretentious. After the engineers were in place, the Wolf team finally dispatched. As Wang Ling said, of the 6 oil production plants on this battlefield, 4 were occupied by the Allied forces, and one of them was very close to the Allied forces' sphere of influence. Wang Ling was already very unhappy when he saw it. The primary target of this operation was just to occupy that oil production plant. The color of this oil extraction plant was orange for the occupying allies. It seems that because it is close to the coalition's sphere of influence, many defense facilities are also built near this oil production plant, including 2 anti-aircraft missiles, 2 machine gun bunkers, and a light prism tower. Of course, the most eye-catching thing is the huge cannon. The huge size of the defensive setup of the giant gun seems to symbolize the super destructive power of the super cannon. One shot can even destroy a small area of relatively close ground infantry, and even ordinary Rhino tanks cannot withstand a few shots from it. However, the long barrel also gives it an unimaginable range. Its construction is simply the strongest defense method for the Allied base. As luck would have it, Wang Ling was determined to dismantle this thing this time. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 165. How difficult is it to dismantle this giant cannon? Think about it, how difficult it would be to get close to a super cannon that has a range far beyond your reach but is extremely powerful. It is estimated that more than 30 soldiers tried to get close to the cannon from far away, but when they got really close, less than 20% of them would be left. As for the 2% of soldiers, there was no way to quickly deal with the giant cannon. What was waiting for them would probably be quickly cleared out. If the Wolf Squad's current lineup were to fight head-on, they could dismantle the cannon and other defensive buildings, but the Wolf Squad itself would also have to pay a huge price. This is also the reason why this oil production plant so close to the coalition forces is still safe. After all, the cost of demolishing these defensive buildings will not be worth the loss. If Wang Ling hadn't come up with a strategy and deployment that satisfied Major General Li Wiki this time, I'm afraid this request wouldn't have been approved. The Wolf team marched very slowly this time, with a rather unhurried feeling, and the entire team was divided into two levels. Only a 3-star Apocalypse tank opened the way at the front, like a particularly obvious arrow. Others followed behind the Apocalypse tank, far, far away. During the march, Wang Ling also paid attention to the electronic map at all times to confirm that there were no other movements in the Allied base and would not interfere with his subsequent actions, and then he moved forward steadily. After marching for a while, they finally gradually approached the oil production plant. At this time, Wang Ling hurriedly ordered again, and the marching speed, which was already not fast, dropped again, and Wang Ling devoted most of his attention to the electronic map. After continuing to advance in this way for a short period of time, the Apocalypse tank at the front finally reached the fire range of the giant cannon. From a very long distance away, Wang Ling and the others heard a loud boom. The sound was deafening, like a landslide. Shortly after the loud noise, the Apocalypse tank at the front was bombarded by a huge artillery shell. The Apocalypse tank was shaken violently, and the health bar above its head was directly reduced by 1/6 or 7-fold. With this explosion, another loud sound came out, like the ground cracking, deafening, and violent shock fluctuations seemed to be heard in the air. At the same time, Wang Ling and others who were far away from the Apocalypse tank felt an obvious shaking from the ground, like a small earthquake. The power of this giant cannon is so terrifying. No matter how confident Wang Ling was, he would not dare to touch the cannonball. Its power was enough to kill him several times in seconds. This means that we can rely on the hardness of the Apocalypse tank. Otherwise, if it were a Rhino tank, at least half of its health would be lost in one shot, and the anti-aircraft tracked vehicle would undoubtedly be killed instantly. After the bombardment of the giant cannon, the Apocalypse tank at the front immediately stopped, turned around and quickly retreated some distance back, hiding outside the range of the giant cannon. During this period, the giant cannon failed to fire a second shot. This approach was naturally arranged by Wang Ling in advance in order to test the extreme range of the giant cannon so that he could implement the next plan. In his mind, Wang Ling also firmly remembered the location where the Apocalypse tank had just been bombarded. He measured it with his fingers in the void, and then simulated an electronic map, using his hand as a compass to draw a half circle. Within this semicircle, everything is a bombing zone. Outside the semicircle, the giant cannon is out of reach. With this specific range standard in mind, Wang Ling felt confident. He smiled sinisterly and directed the Wolf team to move collectively to a 0-degree angle in the semicircle. However, he refused to set foot in the bombing zone. Next, it's time to waiting for the Apocalypse tank to regain its full health. The Apocalypse tank is the ace tank of the coalition forces. It can restore its HP on its own when it is unleveled, but this speed is quite slow. After being promoted to the 3-star elite level, the blood recovery speed will be much faster. This 3-star Apocalypse has successfully recovered its full blood after staying there for a short time. Then, the next step is the plan to attract firepower. Wang Ling and the others moved some distance away, allowing the 3-star Apocalypse to drive within the shooting range of the giant cannon. Wang Ling immediately saw from the map video that the long barrel of the giant cannon was slowly moving towards Apocalypse. The tank swung in the direction as if it was going to continue the bombardment. However, the Apocalypse tank failed to fulfill its intention and waited in place for a moment. When the barrel of the giant cannon was about to swing in this direction, Wang Ling quickly ordered the Apocalypse tank to retreat, and then bypass the cannon's barrel. The angle of the gun barrel broke into its range again. After avoiding the angle of the gun barrel, the Apocalypse tank acted shamelessly. After attracting the attention of the cannon, it actually moved forward quickly along the edge of the cannon's range. The giant cannon was not willing to just let go of the Apocalypse tank. The long barrel continued to swing, following the Apocalypse tank all the way, but it could never keep up. Naturally, it could not fix the target and could only be pulled and swayed like this. There is a mountain range behind the mining site, and no combat plan can be deployed. The angle at which the giant cannon can be fired is only the 180 degrees in front of you. The Apocalypse tank started from the 0-degree angle and slid along the 180-degree angle. Although the giant cannon is powerful, it is not completely invincible. Ignore the 2 points of being incapable of air defense and consuming huge amounts of electricity. Because the cannon shells are too large, it takes a long time to prepare for firing, and the cannon body is too big and it swings very hard. Very slowly, naturally keeping up with the Apocalypse tank. During this period, the giant cannon was unable to fire a single shot. And what Wang Ling and the others were waiting for was this opportunity. Brothers, rush! After seeing the right opportunity, Wang Ling shouted, and the tanks and soldiers who had been arranged in advance seized the time and set off immediately. At the front were 2 3-star Rhino tanks. After all, tanks are much faster than infantry, and these 2 Rhino tanks have special tasks. After they got close to the giant cannon, the 2 machine gun bunkers and the light prism tower opened fire on them. The Rhino tank ignored the cannon and machine gun bunker, and began to dismantle the light prism tower with concentrated fire. In addition to the giant cannon, this thing also poses a considerable threat to the Wolf team. If it were 2 Rhino tanks without levels, there would be no way to deal with the current situation, but the Samsung Elite was different. The explosive continuous firing of shells greatly enhanced its combat capabilities. Under the 2-phase launch, even the prism tower couldn't hold on for too long. I just knocked out half of a Rhino tank's health and then it was dismantled. Taking advantage of this time, Wang Ling had already arrived here with 5 Samsung conscripts and 5 recruits including Li Tong and Gu Suanwu. Together with the Rhino tanks, they attacked the 2 machine gun bunkers, suppressing them with powerful firepower. Down and dismantled it quickly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 166. The Wolf Squad had no air power, and the 2 anti-aircraft missiles posed no threat to them. After the light prism tower and machine gun bunker were demolished, the only thing that could pose a threat to them was the huge cannon. However, this group of people and the 2 Rhino tanks were very abnormal. They did not take advantage of the cannon to dismantle the cannon when it was attracted by the fire. Instead, they hid under the cannon and did nothing. Not only that, the 3-star Apocalypse tank that attracted firepower also received Wang Ling's order and turned to fire out of the range of the giant cannon. If the cannon had any thoughts, he might have to scold his mother now. This damn Apocalypse tank has been fooling it for so long, and then it just slapped its butt and left. After losing this target, the cannon naturally wanted to target Wang Ling and his party. However, After its huge barrel shook for a long time, it sadly discovered that it couldn't do it. Because Wang Ling and the others were in a very tricky position, right within the barrel of the giant cannon. It is true that this giant cannon has an extremely long range and is very powerful, but precisely because of its long barrel, it cannot reach the enemy hiding under the barrel, no matter how destructive it is. No matter how far the range is, it is completely useless. Seemingly aware of this, the long barrel of the cannon was swaying back and forth. It looked like it was going crazy. It was going crazy, but Wang Ling and the others were happy. They were not in a hurry to attack. Instead, they stood under the barrel of the giant cannon majestically, looking at the giant cannon with ridicule or amazement. Among them, Wang Ling was particularly excessive. He even poked the barrel of the giant cannon and mocked, "Squeeze. You keep squeaking. That rumbling before was like thunder, wasn't it quite majestic? You kill it with one shot." After hearing this, the others laughed out loud. In this state, there was no sense of nervousness about fighting. In the command post of the coalition base, Major General Li Wiki and 3 others were always paying attention to the battlefield at Wang Ling's place. Seeing this scene, they all showed expressions of surprise. When Wang Ling explained the deployment plan before, the 3 people's eyes were already a little bright, but they were still worried about what might happen. But now, they are finally relieved. Major General Li Wiki clicked his tongue and did not hesitate to praise, "The brain is a good thing. This Wang Ling's idea is really useful." Zhao Pingwang also smiled and analyzed, "Yes, the defense facilities there are really difficult to attack. If you attack by force, the cost will not be small. Just the range of the giant cannon, it is so far and powerful. It's so big that just getting close is difficult, not to mention there are light prism towers and machine gun bunkers guarding it." But Wang Ling used the elite Apocalypse tank to attract firepower, and then used the speed and destructive power of the Samsung Rhino tank to demolish the light prism tower. Then they cooperated with the soldiers to dismantle the machine gun bunker, and afterwards they hid under the barrel of the giant cannon, so that the giant cannon couldn't do anything to them. I'm afraid this deployment is quite disgusting for the enemy, right? Rovitsky also nodded, but this guy always seems to like to find faults. It is quite disgusting to the enemy. I also think his plan is quite eye-catching. There are basically 0 casualties. The 2 damaged vehicles the Rhino tank can recover if you give it some time. However, the deployment of the Wolf team is a bit speculative. It seems that it basically relies on 3-star tanks. Without those tanks, I am afraid that Wang Ling will be helpless in the current situation. Major General Li Wiki snorted and said, "No matter what he relies on, this deployment plan alone is enough for Wang Ling to be praised. Moreover, whether it is an elite Apocalypse tank or an elite Rhino tank, they are not all wolves. Did the team win with its own merits? Therefore, this cannot be considered speculation. Even if these elite tanks are handed over to other teams, I am afraid they will not be able to reach the level of the Wolf team." After hearing this, Rovsky was finally speechless. At this time, in the video, Wang Ling and the others still did not take action, and were still waiting under the barrel of the giant cannon. After Major General Li Wiki saw it, he finally couldn't help but remind him, "Wang Ling, what are you doing? Can you enjoy the shade under the cannon? Remove it for me quickly, or something will happen later." "Yes." When Wang Ling heard this, he responded quickly, and then with an order, the members of the Wolf team surrounding the cannon, whether they were tanks or soldiers, all started firing at once. Within this range, although the members of the Wolf team were not complete, they were still full of firepower. The health bar on the top of the giant cannon was declining at an alarming speed. During this period, the giant cannon kept shaking its barrel, as if expressing protest and resentment. But Wang Ling and the others were unambiguous in their actions. Soon after, they completely dismantled the giant cannon. The loud bang made their hearts tremble. Everyone else became excited when they saw this scene, but Wang Ling was suddenly stunned. The last blow of this giant cannon seemed to be made by Wang Ling, and he successfully gained experience. After being a 3-star elite, after fighting for so long, and finally adding the experience of this giant cannon, Wang Ling finally successfully advanced to the 5-star Special Forces level at this moment. At this moment, Wang Ling's mind seemed to have experienced the infusion of the military experience book again, and his body was also slightly strengthened. Of course, the most obvious enhancement is the electromagnetic launch device in Wang Ling's hand. Wang Ling can clearly feel that the destructive power of this thing is much stronger than before. From conscripts to magnetic blast infantry, Wang Ling has experienced many promotions, but the feeling of each promotion makes Wang Ling feel refreshed. The gradually stronger firepower makes Wang Ling even more excited. Ling was secretly happy. Of course, in this red alert world, Wang Ling, as a player, is a special being. Only he can advance to the 3-star elite level and above, and unless it is in battle, others cannot see Wang Ling's changes at all. After Wang Ling was promoted and strengthened, others didn't notice anything at all and were still in the excitement of blasting the giant cannon. After Wang Ling looked at it, he smiled and shook his head, but did not interfere with them. This oil production plant was originally quite a headache, but now, the light prism towers, machine gun bunkers, and cannons have all been demolished, leaving only 2 anti-aircraft missiles that pose no threat to the Wolf team. This contrasting change before and after, that's really too big. After the threat was gone, Wang Ling immediately notified the other members of the Wolf team and rushed here with the engineer. The engineer was also unambiguous. When he arrived, he broke into the orange oil production plant without saying a word. After he entered, the oil production plant's transmission line was immediately changed to the coalition base where Wang Ling was located. At the same time, the original orange color on the map also changed to red at this moment. This is also announcing that the coalition base has officially seized this oil production plant. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 167. The oil production plant had just been occupied and the oil pipeline had just been changed, but the coalition base was already continuing to increase its funds. Seeing the base's funds growing little by little, Major General Li Wiki couldn't help but curl up his lips. Although these funds do not increase by much each time, the success lies in their continuous flow. If the stalemate on this battlefield lasts too long and all the gold mines are mined, then this oil extraction plant will be a real hot commodity. As for this kind of delicious food, they already have 2 of them in this base, and the funds they receive every moment are increasing exponentially. Under this situation, even Major General Li Wiki couldn't help but feel a little happy in his heart. As for the battlefield, next to the newly occupied oil production plant, after the Wolf team assisted the engineers in occupying the oil production plant, they turned their attention to the 2 anti-aircraft missiles on the side. At the current coalition base, it seems that the Kirov airship has not yet been developed, let alone the latter version of the armed helicopter, and there is no air power at all. These 2 anti-aircraft missiles pose almost no threat to the current coalition forces. Building them in this place is simply a waste of maintenance power for no reason. Wang Ling also thought about leaving these 2 anti-aircraft missiles like this to consume more power from the Allies. But then I was afraid that the Allies would be scheming and temporarily sell these 2 anti-aircraft missiles, so it would be better to dismantle them in advance. Thinking of this, Wang Ling finally made up his mind not to keep this thing for the Allies. However, he did not immediately let other personnel take action. Wang Ling had just been promoted to a 5-star Special Magnetic Blast Infantry, and he also wanted to test the current power. So, he came to the vicinity of an anti-aircraft missile alone, picked up the electromagnetic launcher and blasted the anti-aircraft missile. Wang Ling was also a little surprised by this blast. The electromagnetic device that has been strengthened to 5 stars is much more powerful. The electric arc is obviously a bit thicker than before. It bombards the anti-aircraft missiles, and even a large number of electric sparks appear. The electric buzz caused by the strong discharge, the sound was also extremely harsh. Moreover, because it was the first time for Wang Ling to use electromagnetic attack after strengthening, the counter-shock force brought by this electromagnetic device made Wang Ling's right hand tremble for a while. After noticing these changes, Wang Ling gradually became excited after being surprised, controlled the strength of his arms, and then frequently released electromagnetic attacks at the anti-aircraft missiles. With the strengthening of the electromagnetic device and the effect of the military experience book, Wang Ling now launches electromagnetic attacks at a higher frequency than before. With such powerful destructive power, even with strong anti-aircraft missiles, the health bar above his head was shrinking at a relatively rapid speed, and soon it turned red. When others saw Wang Ling's current offensive dream, they also looked sideways. This cheap captain seemed to be stronger than before. Now this anti-aircraft missile will be exploded directly if Wang Ling fires 2 more electromagnetic attacks. But at this time, Wang Ling suddenly stopped and ordered the unranked novices to mobilize troops to attack. He is now a 5-star elite. From 5-star to 7-star, this period requires a lot of experience. It cannot be promoted in a short time. It is better to leave this experience to the new recruits to promote a few elite soldiers. The combat effectiveness of the Wolf team will also increase accordingly. Wang Ling's plan turned out quite well, and the new recruits did not disappoint him. Under concentrated fire, the 2 anti-aircraft missiles were quickly dismantled. As for the result, naturally 2 more 3-star elite mobilization troops were produced, one of which was Li Tong. Wang Ling was quite satisfied with this result. Now, with the successful occupation of this oil production plant, the Wolf team has completed the mission assigned by Major General Li Wiki. As for whether engineers will be sent to build defensive buildings in the future, that is not something Wang Ling should consider. He has now identified the next oil production plant to attack from the electronic map. That's right, Wang Ling is a big-hearted guy, and he sees more than just this oil production plant. The Allies took the lead in targeting their oil production plants. This has made Wang Ling disgusted. Since you dare to do such a thing, let's see who is more disgusting. However, the remaining 3 oil production plants were, after all, close to or even within the Allies' sphere of influence. Wang Ling was careless and did not mobilize troops immediately. Instead, he rested collectively and waited for the 2 damaged Samsung Rhino tanks to recover. After full health, they set off collectively. In the coalition command post, when he saw the actions of the Wolf team, Rovsky said in surprise, "No, Wang Ling really has this intention. Does he really dare to target their oil production plant right under the nose of the Allied forces?" King Xiaoming was also dumbfounded. If it were Sun Dehu who led the team, I guess they wouldn't dare, but Wang Ling, a stupid young man, is different. On the battlefield back then, Wang Ling even dared to be worse than what he is doing now. How courageous is he to attack a complete Allied base with a distant lineup? Just be bold, but he won in the end. Rovsky had heard about Wang Ling's achievements before, and now that Zhao Ping mentioned it, he couldn't help but grin. "So, your battlefield ended so quickly." In the final analysis, Wang Ling was still the one who was stunned. "It's a bloody head." "Who says it's not?" Zhao Ping Wang spread his hands. As for Major General Li Wiki, he stared at the Wolf team in the map video and frowned slightly, but did not say much. He had obviously acquiesced to Wang Ling's actions, and it was up to them to see what results they would achieve. On the battlefield, after all, you have to rush to the Allied forces' sphere of influence. It is not like the Allied forces here. Reinforcements may arrive at any time, and Wang Ling has to be vigilant. The team was not moving very fast. The tanks basically took care of the speed of the infantry and moved forward together. The members of a provincial team were divided into several parts. This was too dangerous. And this battlefield, both in scale and area, was far superior to the previous one. The Wolf Squad was advancing at the fastest speed of mobilizing troops, but it would take too long to reach the Allied forces' sphere of influence. Wang Ling did not want his team to be too tired, but instead the enemy would take advantage of them by waiting for work. That afternoon, after crossing the bridge in the center of the battlefield and marching forward for more than an hour, Wang Ling chose a hidden valley to rest first. The actions of the Wolf team could naturally be seen by the Allied forces, but the Allied forces were controlled by the system after all. Before the actual battle started, there was basically no reaction. Wang Ling watched the map for a long time, and only felt relieved after confirming that it was safe. After resting and stationing that afternoon, the Wolf team simply spent the night here. This night was relatively peaceful, and there was never any movement from the Allied forces. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Wang Ling had a good sleep after returning from the real world. Early the next morning, all members of the Wolf team got up and took turns eating breakfast before finally setting off again. If nothing else happens, we will probably have a firefight with the Allies today. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 168. Let's talk about it before. After learning about the hidden dangers of the different dimensional system, Wang Ling was very frightened and did not want to go to the battlefield to fight. But now, Wang Ling has looked away, and because of the intermediate enhancement, his ability to survive on the battlefield is now quite strong. Coupled with the strength of the Wolf Squad, such a group of brothers, many 3-star elites, and the existence of powerful weapons such as the Apocalypse tank, Wang Ling was vaguely looking forward to engaging in a firefight with the enemy. After the intermediate level strengthening, Wang Ling finally understood the importance of points in the different dimensional system. Those Allied troops were the source of his points. In the vast land of the Red Alert world, there is quite a tragic feeling of broken mountains and rivers. The air is always filled with the smell of gunpowder smoke, and the sky seems to be a little gloomy. On this battlefield, a team of 60 or 70 people, with a group of tanks and vehicles, was advancing unhurriedly towards the enemy's sphere of influence. This team is naturally Wang Ling's Wolf Squad. Although there is no movement of the Allied troops on the electronic map, Wang Ling does not dare to be careless. The team's moving speed has always been very slow, and the tanks and soldiers are always together. Move forward together. After all, if a war starts within the enemy's sphere of influence, the enemy's troops will need reinforcements very quickly. This battlefield is very large, but after all, Wang Ling and the others have already passed the halfway point of their march yesterday, and the rest of the journey is not too far away. With the forward speed of the Wolf team, after nearly 2 hours of trekking, they finally arrived. They approached the oil production plant closest to them. It seemed that because they were already within the Allied forces' sphere of influence, there was not a single defensive building near the 3 oil production plants occupied by the Allied forces, as if it was expected that the Allied forces would not attack the oil production plants. This heart is big enough. If it were the previous stalemate, with several bases each occupying an oil production plant and maintaining a balance, maybe no one would really come up with the idea of this oil production plant for a while, but who let the Blue Allies take the lead? The balance is already on the verge of being broken, and Wang Ling doesn't mind making the balance even more chaotic. After arriving nearby, Wang Ling was not in a hurry to take action. After a long journey, the Wolf team was inevitably a little tired, so he simply ordered the team to take a rest aside. After more than 10 minutes, and after ensuring that everyone had sufficient physical strength, Wang Ling gave the order, and the entire army collectively attacked the oil production plant. With the firepower of the Wolf team, it was a simple matter to dismantle the oil production plant. However, just when the team was about to blow up the oil production plant, Wang Ling issued an emergency order to stop the attack and then retreated collectively. At a certain distance, send the 1-star Apocalypse tank alone to attack. This oil extraction plant is different from ordinary buildings. After all, it is extracted oil. When it is exploded, the oil will be ignited and detonated in an instant. The shock wave and fire wave generated in an instant are quite terrifying in destructive power. All ground infantry units, without exception, will be covered in a sea of fire in an instant if they are contaminated. Their whole bodies will be engulfed in flames. There is no possibility of survival. They will die almost immediately. Even Wang Ling's level has no way to survive. Ungraded anti-aircraft tracked vehicles are affected and may even be directly exploded. Even Rhino tanks will lose a lot of health. Only the heavy armor of the Apocalypse tank can withstand this impact to the greatest extent. After the one-star Apocalypse tank received the order, it immediately started to take action. It galloped on its 4 tracks for a while and returned to the vicinity of the oil production plant. A pair of cannon barrels immediately fired 2 destructive shells, which landed on the already weak person. On the oil production plant, it was blown up in an instant. Boom! The oil production plant exploded, and there was a deafening loud noise in an instant, accompanied by rolling shock waves and fire waves. Even though Wang Ling and the others were far away from the oil production plant, they still felt some pain in their faces when they came into contact with the aftermath, and they hurriedly covered their faces with their arms. The shock wave came and went away quickly. The explosion in the oil production plant was only a one-time event. There was no subsequent impact. After the heat disappeared, Wang Ling and the others put down their hands. At this time, the original oil production plant was in ruins, and the one-star Apocalypse tank that was affected by the explosion had lost about 1/6 to 76th of its health. Wang Ling has not done any specific statistics, so he cannot tell which one is more destructive compared to the explosion of the oil plant and the shells of the giant cannon, but they are both not weak. This means that the Apocalypse tank has high armor, otherwise it would really be useless. Easy to bear. Wang Ling originally thought about occupying this oil production plant, but after all, this place was too close to the Allied forces' sphere of influence. Even if he successfully occupied it, it would probably be bombed by the Allied forces soon, so Wang Ling simply didn't bother. It would be more refreshing to just blast it instead of taking the trouble. This oil production plant originally showed blue on the map, indicating that it was occupied by the blue Allied base. However, now that the oil production plant has been blown up, the blue Allied base on the map seems to be missing. What action? Although he knew that the enemy forces controlled by the system never liked support, they pushed their oil production plant almost near their sphere of influence, but they still did nothing, which made Wang Ling a little surprised. But hey, there's no movement. It seems like it didn't hurt you. It's good. Since you won't stop us, then don't bother with the remaining 2 oil production plants. There was no blocking team, so Wang Ling was happy and relaxed. After pushing down this oil production plant, the Wolf team did not stay too much. After a short rest, Wang Ling had already targeted the next oil production plant and directed the Wolf team to move forward. This oil production plant has completely entered the Allied forces' sphere of influence. If the Allied forces want to support it, the distance is very short. However, the Wolf squad came in force, but there was no response from them. Only the time travel mining vehicles kept going out to mine. Wang Ling ignored them. While paying attention to the electronic map, he directed the Wolf team and opened fire after approaching the oil production plant. Just like when they attacked the previous oil production plant, the troops immediately stopped attacking after the oil production plant had lost its health. After retreating a certain distance, they let the one-star Apocalypse tank do the damage. As a result, they replaced it with a small amount of health. The Allies' second oil production plant. This oil production plant was owned by the Yellow Allied base. After the explosion, I looked at the electronic map and found that the Yellow Allied base had done nothing. Interesting, so insensitive. Wang Ling smiled and said something sarcastic before directing the wolf team to continue approaching the last oil production plant. This oil production plant is closer to the Allied base, almost at the foot of their mountain, and is only separated from the Green Allied base by a long slope. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 169. Such a close distance can really be said to be right under the eyes of the Allied forces. If this Green Allied forces base wants to start a fight, it only takes a few minutes from the time it gathers its troops to the time it reaches here. Wang Ling is now looking forward to the battle with the Allies, but he is not a fool. In such a place, he is also very vigilant. Some distance away from the oil production plant, I carefully observed the Green Allied base, but in this base, it still seemed not to care about the wolf team's attack, and there was no tendency to send troops to encircle and suppress it. Are you so arrogant? Wang Ling picked his chin. Since you don't come, I won't be polite. However, just when he was about to order the forced demolition of the oil production plant, he suddenly discovered from the map that several light spots in the yellow Allied base suddenly left the base, and then quickly rushed towards them. Taking a closer look, it turned out to be 4 Black Hawk fighter jets. Good guy, this reaction is a bit slow. But this counterattack is also generous enough. 4 Black Hawk fighter jets are flying at once, which is enough to look down on us. Wang Ling muttered something, frowned slightly, waved his hand, and shouted, "Get ready to fight, at 3 o'clock, 4 Black Hawk fighter jets are coming. Anti-aircraft crawlers, push them to the front, you can count on how many hits you can get. How many, other tanks, be careful to avoid attacks." When Allied fighter planes came to bomb, they were almost certainly heading for the tanks. Wang Ling was very clear about the nature of the computer controlled by the system, but he was not sure which area the 4 Black Hawk fighter planes were specifically targeting. Tank. When the members of the Wolf team heard this, they quickly took action. 2 anti-aircraft crawler vehicles separated from the team some distance and stood at the 4 o'clock direction. Other tanks, such as the Apocalypse tank and the Rhino tank, shook their barrels slightly and seemed to be ready to avoid the shells. In comparison, the soldiers were safer. They just kept a certain distance from the tanks, then raised their heads and watched. Just as the Wolf squad was preparing for the attack, the 4 Black Hawk fighter jets finally approached. After they entered the fire range of the anti-aircraft crawler vehicles, the 2 anti-aircraft crawler vehicles opened fire immediately. But this Black Hawk fighter is not like the Invader fighter. Its armor and health are much higher. The 2 anti-aircraft crawler vehicles could not be defeated for a while. As a result, the 4 Black Hawk fighters were stunned by the cannonballs of the crawler vehicles. Past that range. From the looks of it, they were obviously not coming for the anti-aircraft crawler vehicles. The tracked vehicle was still firing non-stop, and the Black Hawk fighter jet passed over their heads, flew past, and soon came to the heads of other Wolf team members, aimed at an ungraded Rhino tank and fired 4 missiles. After knowing that it was being targeted, the Rhino tank rushed forward in an attempt to avoid it. When it comes to dodging fighter jets' missiles, Samsung's tanks are relatively good at it, but ungraded tanks pale in comparison. Not long after it was launched, the 4 missiles landed on it accurately. The Rhino tank is much more resistant to beatings than the Grizzly tank. Usually, 3 missiles from the Invader fighter planes are needed to blow up an ungraded Rhino tank at once. But the Black Hawk fighter only needed 2 rounds, and now this Rhino tank took 4 rounds in one breath. The result is naturally self-evident. The Rhino tank was exploded in an instant. Although in this world, Wang Ling values soldiers far more than tanks, and often uses tanks as shields, but a Rhino tank of the Wolf team was blown up like this, and Wang Ling also became famous. He rolled his eyes and shouted, "It's his grandma's. Don't let me go, shoot them all down." As he finished speaking, the two Apocalypse tanks also launched anti-aircraft missiles into the air. However, the speed of their missiles is really slow, and it takes time to track the Black Hawk fighter jets, which makes them somewhat unreliable. However, the anti-aircraft tracked vehicles were in high spirits. The Black Hawk fighter jets also needed to pass through their fire range when they returned, and they opened fire again desperately. I hit them once when I came, and again when I left, twice before and after. Even the Black Hawk fighter jets couldn't stand it. On the way back, 3 were finally shot down. The ungraded anti-aircraft tracked vehicle was directly upgraded to the 3-star elite level. But the remaining Black Hawk fighter flew out of their fire range at the cost of remaining health. Not being able to shoot them all down, Wang Ling was furious when he suddenly noticed the surface-to-air missiles tracking behind the Black Hawk fighter. He immediately widened his eyes and watched them without blinking, for fear of missing something. Not only him, but others were also watching, looking a little nervous and not daring to breathe. While waiting and watching, I saw that the anti-aircraft missile had been tracking for a period of time at a speed slightly faster than the Black Hawk fighter jet, and then finally hit the last Black Hawk fighter jet and shot it down. At this point, all 4 Black Hawk fighter jets were finally shot down after destroying a Rhino tank. Well done. This result also made Wang Ling feel relieved. If you dare to bomb my troops, you must be prepared to pay a huge price. As for the last surface-to-air missile, no need to ask, it naturally came from the barrel of the Apocalypse tank. After all, this Apocalypse tank is used for both ground and air purposes. Although it is too slow when attacking air targets, the power of the missiles it launches cannot be underestimated. This Black Hawk fighter, as the exclusive fighter of a certain allied force, is quite expensive. The cost of a Black Hawk fighter is about 1.5 times that of a Rhino tank. But this time, the Allies' the cost of 4 Black Hawk fighter jets being shot down was the destruction of 1 Rhino tank of the Wolf Squad, which was still unleveled. It has to be said that the Allies suffered a huge loss this time, almost losing blood. But Wang Ling acted in a cheap manner and always felt that they had suffered a loss. He gritted his teeth and looked at the nearby oil production plant, shouting, "Tear it down for me." After receiving the order, the Wolf team immediately took action and focused fire to attack the oil production plant. When it was still in HP, it was handed over to the 1-star Apocalypse tank and finally exploded. Every time he gives the last experience to the 1-star Apocalypse, this is Wang Ling's deliberate decision. In addition to the Apocalypse tank with high armor, Wang Ling also wants to cultivate another 3-star elite Apocalypse. After all, a 3-star Apocalypse tank has terrifying firepower. Although the Wolf team already has one, who would think that such a powerful weapon is too many? The final result did not disappoint Wang Ling. When Wang Ling came to this battlefield, this Apocalypse tank was already a 1-star veteran. After fighting together for so long, it took down 3 oil production plants. After the experience, I was finally promoted to Samsung Elite. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 170. The Apocalypse tank was shining with light at this time, which seemed to show that it had successfully advanced, and at the same time, its combat effectiveness also increased by several levels in an instant. The firepower of Samsung Elite's Apocalypse tank is no joke. Up to now, the Wolf Squad already has 2 3-star Elite Apocalypse tanks. 2 big killers are stationed there. This also gives Wang Ling a lot of confidence. At the same time, the Wolf Squad also has several 3-star Rhino tanks and anti-aircraft crawlers, as well as dozens of 3-star elite mobilization troops. Coupled with Wang Ling, a captain who cannot be judged by common sense, the current Wolf Squad can be said to be unprecedentedly powerful. Looking at the 3-star Apocalypse tank that was successfully promoted, Wang Ling inevitably felt a little relieved. Although it was affected by the explosions of 3 oil production plants one after another, and now this apocalypse tank has lost half of its health, it has been promoted to the elite level after all, and its self-healing ability has been strengthened. If you give it some time, it will recover sooner or later. After losing an ungraded Rhino tank, he gained a 3-star Apocalypse tank and a 3-star anti-aircraft crawler vehicle. After this comparison, Wang Ling finally felt a little more balanced. Although the Wolf Team's expedition did not last long, they successfully occupied an oil production plant, later pushed 3 more, and shot down 4 Black Hawk fighter jets. Although I dare not say how dazzling this victory was, the captains of other teams in the base also looked at it with side eyes after observing it. In the command post, Major General Li Wiki also raised the corners of his lips and praised, "Well done." Now, the Allies are disgusted. Rovitsky looked a little unconvinced. The Wolf Team is happy, but the oil production plants we occupied will also be targeted. Allied troops will definitely come to attack in the future. However, King Xiaoping laughed, "Why do you feel like you are like a little resentful woman who likes to find fault in everything you do?" Rovitsky glared at him, but for a moment he couldn't come up with an answer. But Major General Li Wiki nodded and said, "Yes, it can be expected that there will definitely be an attack. However, after all, they started it first, so they can't blame us. Send the order to build one near another oil production plant. Sentry guns, magnetic storm coils and anti-aircraft guns. Even if the Allies really want to attack the oil production plant, they will have to pay a price that far exceeds ours. By the way, let's inform LOER and remind them that they should build. Don't leave your defensive buildings behind." Got the order. On this battlefield, there are 2 coalition bases fighting side by side, and the LOER mentioned by Major General Li Wiki is naturally the commander of the other coalition base. If he can cooperate with Major General Li Wiki, his military rank will naturally not be lower, and he is also a commander. Major General. But in fact, LOER was actually watching the electronic video during this period. He didn't need to notify him now to know how disgusting the Allies were now, and they had already ordered to step up the construction of those defensive buildings. On the battlefield, in front of the Green Allied base, Wang Ling's Wolf Squad has not left since they pushed down the last oil production plant. All members are now feeling a little surging in their hearts. Among them, the members of the original 5th Company are the most important. With their original strength, they can be said to be cannon fodder on this battlefield. But now they are merged under the Wolf Squad and commanded by Wang Ling, but they can also gallop. On the battlefield, he did a series of things that gave the Allies headaches and nausea. This contrasting change can't help but make them sigh. After a burst of excitement, Sun Dehu asked, "Captain, the mission is completed. What should we do next?" "Return to the base." Wang Ling did not answer him immediately. Instead, he looked up at the Green Allied base behind the long slope, as if he saw the figure that made him want to tear himself apart, his eyes full of hatred. After watching for a while, Wang Lingke said, "Why are you in such a hurry to go back? It's rare that we have come out, and we have already come under the eyes of the Allied forces. If I don't discuss them enough, I will not go back. Even if I can't take revenge now, then you have to charge some interest. There is a saying that goes well, when generals are out, military orders are not obeyed. Although in the war in the Red Alert world, the command center can use radio to contact the troops in every corner at any time, but with Wang Ling's temperament, he is really stubborn and strong. I am afraid that even Major General Li Wiki will find it difficult to defeat him. What's more, Major General Li Wiki has not issued a retreat order yet." Of course, Wang Ling was not willing to go back like this. He waved his hand and gave the order, "Everyone retreats 2 kilometers, maintain combat readiness and be stationed, and be ready to fight at any time to meet the enemy." The Wolf Squad naturally obeyed his orders. The whole army retreated 2 kilometers in an orderly manner and then stationed themselves on the spot, as if they were going to fight for a long time. 2 kilometers, 2,000 meters, sounds like a long distance, but on this huge battlefield, it is very inconspicuous. You can see the periphery of the green Allied base with a telescope here. It can be said that it is still in the distance. Under the noses of the Allied forces, it was like a thorn in the flesh. In the command post, Major General Lewicki was a little surprised when he saw what the Wolf Squad was doing, and Rovik had his old habit again. The mission has been completed, and the Wolf Squad hasn't come back yet, so he is planning to disobey orders again. Really? If something happens to them, it would be too late for rescue at such a long distance. Prince Xiaoping said with a smile, "It's not disobedience." The commander didn't say that he would let them back immediately after completing the mission. I have also told you about Wang Ling's experience. He has hatred in his heart. Now he wants to target that green Allied base is really normal. But Rovitsky was still a little unconvinced, but Major General Lewicki suddenly interrupted, "Okay, I did not give a fatal order to let them come back. Since there is a grudge, let them collect some interest. Wang Ling is a soldier, and so it's a good thing for a man to have such a bloody spirit. As for what will happen to his Wolf Squad? Humph, I don't believe it. Unless Wang Ling makes a major mistake in his command, the current Wolf Squad and the Allies will also have a headache." Since even General Lewicki said this, Rovsky could only spread his hands and did not continue to protest. Compared to these two people, Captain Rovitsky always seemed to like to be more serious, but he couldn't help the Wolf team. Wang Ling could actually guess some of the discussions in the command post, but he didn't quite know the outcome. After the Wolf team was stationed, he had been waiting for radio messages to see if Major General Lewicki wanted to force them. Tune back. But after waiting for a while, there was still no news. It seems that the base has acquiesced to the Wolf team's approach. Wang Ling breathed a sigh of relief, and then looked at the green Allied base with burning eyes. "Next, let's have some fun."